Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is episode 144. We are at the tail end of August. I know I say it every week, but this summer is flying by. My kids are starting school next week. They just got their school schedules. My daughter's a rising senior. Got her driver's license, been tooling around a little bit. My middle guy's starting high school, and my little guy's starting 7th grade. So lots of action, lots of, I wouldn't say excitement, but I guess lots of anticipation and dread for the start of the school year. But like I always say, the start of the school year is when the Mudgil family grind begins. You know, we all kind of take our foot off the gas during the summer a little bit. But, you know, when my kids start their grind, you know, we intensify as parents our grind as well. And our collective family grind intensifies as well. So just soaking in the last week of this summer before we, you know, resume the grind. So anyways, this podcast, I'm actually going to share a story with you guys. This actually just happened to me yesterday. So I was actually going to speak about something entirely different, but things changed, and this is what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to share the story first, and I'm going to talk a bit about, you know, lessons learned from this story. So yesterday in the morning, I came to my office pretty early in the morning. I mean, not super early, but like around in the 8 o'clock hour or something like that, just to grab something, take it back to my home. And when I was driving back, you know, it's a drive that I literally do, I mean, a million times. I was driving, you know, it's kind of a busy road. It's like a 6-lane road. There's 3 lanes going north, 3 lanes going south, and then it kind of consolidates into 1 lane as you kind of pass the commercial area of the town. And I was driving in the middle lane, and the car in front of me was driving pretty slow. I wasn't driving fast. I was probably going like 40 miles an hour or something. But I put my turn signal on to go to the left lane to pass this car, you know, check my mirrors, etc. Everything looked good, making my turn, and making my lane shift rather. And all of a sudden, this car like comes out of nowhere, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And this is like one of those moments where everything goes in slow mo. I just remember looking at the driver of the other car, like just in shock, and he was looking at me, in shock / maybe a little bit of rage, and he had to veer off onto the other side into like oncoming traffic. Fortunately, it wasn't that busy of a time, into like a turning lane. Then came back over the divider. All of this has happened literally in a split second, but you know, for me, it literally seemed like an eternity. You know, traffic is still moving. Then he comes into the middle lane, because I went back into the middle lane instead of going into the left lane. Jams on his brakes. He's like, you know, just yelling and screaming. You know, he's like, you know, super angry. I could see in his rear view mirror, like the reflection of him. Then he opens up he stops, like, you know, traffic's still moving. So I obviously stop behind him. He gets out of his car. He approaches my car. He starts like banging on my window and on my hood, just like literally irate, like, you know, a lot of F-bombs, etc. I'm literally just in shock at this point. You know, like it was just a sequence of events, you know, like I said, the slow-mo sequence of events, like, holy shit, what's going to happen? Oh my God, I hope everyone's going to be okay. You know, he's like kind of veering off. He veers back. And I'm just like, wow, thank God everyone is okay. I'm in the middle lane. You know, he's obviously just in a complete rage about what went down. And, you know, I just put my hands up and like, listen, you know, my bad, sorry, you know. And he was like literally going nuts. I wasn't really super physically threatened. I mean, he was like a chubby, slight guy, which, you know, but it was just jarring. The whole situation was very jarring. Then he got back in his car, and then eventually, you know, he proceeded to go north. I was behind him, was still kind of like shaken up a little bit just by all the stuff that went down, but, you know, it's like slowly proceeding north. And then I saw him like just like go like 90 miles an hour, like kind of weaving between cars and like, you know, going crazy again. So when I got home, I was literally 2 minutes away from my house. When I got home, I told my wife, I was like, well, this is the craziest thing just happened. Like I was kind of still like, I guess in like a state of like mini shock. And as I was thinking about what happened, like, you know, like none of my, you know, all these new cars, like they have like, you know, I checked my mirrors, I checked behind, you know, my left shoulder before I made the turn. All these new cars have these like sensors, like, you know, these like blind spot sensors where if like a car is approaching, you don't see it, it goes like beep or something flashes. None of that happened. I mean, this all literally happened in a split second. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, how did this possibly happen? In the context of like, you know, the way I saw him like driving off. And it literally occurred to me that he was probably in the right lane going like 90 miles an hour in like a 40 mile an hour speed zone, and then cut from the right lane all the way over to the left lane because he saw the left lane was open, not anticipating me crossing over to the left lane to pass the car in front of me. And, that's how we nearly like sideswiped each other. And it really, I was like, all day I was kind of like thinking about it. Like first I was like in shock and just like grateful that like everyone was okay. And then I was just like, somewhat confused at all of those events. And then I started thinking about it. I was starting to get kind of angry that like this guy like was driving like a total maniac, put both of our lives at risk by the way he was driving, but somehow was mad at me for like some craziness, some crazy driving that he was doing. And then, everything kind of came full circle at the end of the day. And there are basically like two lessons I learned from the events of yesterday. One is it's always best to confront crazy with calm. I mean, this guy was literally going berserk, like banging on my car. And, just because I was in a state of shock, I didn't really react. But had I processed the information like as I did, like, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes later and realized like, this guy was driving like an asshole and that's why this stuff happened, I might have reacted completely differently. I might have gotten out of my car. I might have gotten into an altercation with this guy. I don't know what would happen, but, I was in such a state of shock that I was actually, very kind of zenly calm in this state of chaos. But because I was able to confront this guy's crazy with my state of calm, it really kind of just diffused the situation. He got back in his car and drove away. So it was a reminder to myself that it's always best to confront crazy with calm. And the second thing I was thinking about was just like the perspective. So my perspective of these events was like, oh my God, this is crazy what's happening. And thank God everyone is okay. It could have been a very, very horrible outcome, for him, especially like veering onto the other side of the street. For me, I mean, bad things could have happened. I could have veered off into another car. Lots of bad things could have happened. My kids could have been in my car. All kinds of like terrible things could have happened. And, I was just grateful. Like, thank God everything was okay. That was my perspective. Whereas this guy's perspective was, like this, like he somehow like, he had the right to drive like a maniac, put everyone's lives at risk on the road, just because whatever his priorities were at that moment were much more important than like the safety of everyone else on the road. And then more so like, he was enraged with me for like, I was literally, following the traffic laws of New York State. I had my signal on, I was making, going over into the left lane. I was not above the speed limit. But, somehow, in his mind, I was the aggressor here. And, more and then further, like accountability, like, this particular, I wouldn't quite call him a gentleman, but this individual was driving like a complete maniac, like literally, like I said, putting everyone's lives in danger by the way he was driving. And his, like, his version of accountability was like, he played no role in the sequence of events that literally could have, endangered, a dozen people potentially. And, ultimately that came full circle. And what I came to realize is, you can only be accountable for yourself. You can't take responsibility for the level of accountability that other individuals have. Like in my wildest dreams, I know I would never be able to convince this person that, hey man, like, you were wrong. Like, you basically were driving like a maniac, going from the right lane to the left lane, going probably more than double the speed limit in the area. And you hold yourself like, there's no responsibility that you're assigning to yourself for what happened and for like, the danger that you put everyone else in and what could have potentially happened. I will never be able to convince this person of that. I'm pretty sure of that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'm probably right in this situation. But again, the accountability, the standard that you hold yourself to is really, that affects the people in your immediate world. It affects yourself. And, at the end of the day, I speak about a lot in a lot of my posts is like, you can lie to anybody you want, but you can't lie to yourself. You have to be true to yourself. You have to hold yourself accountable. And, that old phrase, being the bigger person, it's so important, particularly in a situation like this, because like I said, had I had the perspective of like 15 minutes later, when I was able to actually process these sequence of events, I might have reacted differently and the whole outcome of the situation could have been entirely different. I could have been sitting in a jail cell yesterday afternoon, had I reacted. in like, with the perspective I had 15 minutes later. But, I'm glad I confronted crazy with calm, mostly because I was in a state of shock, but still, it worked out. And, ultimately, like I said, if everyone held themselves to a high standard and were accountable for their actions, the world would obviously be a better place. But, we're all wired different, we all have different circumstances that affect our behavior and our actions. But, like I said, you can only be accountable to yourself. It's important to hold yourself to a high standard, to be accountable, because there are people in this world like this jerk I encountered yesterday who had no personal accountability, no, perspective, and, just really didn't care about the consequences of his actions. So don't be that guy. Be a person who holds himself accountable and cares about the other people in their world, whether or not they even know them. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful, restful weekend and are ready to just crush this week ahead. Let's get it.